Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Hibernia. Well, one of my loyal viewers asked me a considerable time ago if I could explain how I came by this accent, because, you know, my byline says George from Ireland. Why is it I don't have a typically Irish accent? Well, it's a curious tale. Don't want to give away too much autobiographical detail, but I had three distinct influences on my accent when I was little. Cork accent, received pronunciation from relatives of mine who had that accent, and an American accent. Surprisingly, I went to an American school when I was little, until the age of 7. I completed second grade. Wasn't in the United States. I was growing up elsewhere, going to an American school in a third country. So I started going to boarding school at the age of 7, and that's how I picked up received pronunciation. Where was I at boarding school? You've guessed it, Scotland. I'm not joking. I got this accent in Scotland. I was there for 6 years. So I know it's not a typical Scots accent. So what is RP? Received pronunciation. It's meant to be received in the sense of correct or accepted. Now, this accent is not better or worse than any other accent. I'm not making value judgments. I'm simply telling you what it is. It was associated with the upper class in the United Kingdom. Let me emphasize, I am not upper class. I'm middle class. My origins are working class. As it so happens, I've got this accent. So it was also known as a public school accent, or the Queen's English perhaps, occasionally standard British English or Southern British English, a home counties accent, people occasionally called it. What are the home counties? They're the counties immediately adjacent to London, as in that would be Hertfordshire, Essex, Kent, Surrey, Berkshire and Buckinghamshire, doing them clockwise. So yes, it's true that a higher proportion of people in London and the home counties would speak with this accent, but there would still be a minority. Most Londoners certainly spoke in a Cockney accent, that's the working class London accent, and some of them speak other versions of English. There was a bit of West Indian accent amongst people, even those are white. They talk about Jafaican in the last 20 years or so, as in fake Jamaican, even whites pretending to have a West Indian accent. Well, that was quite a major influence, so maybe it wasn't pretending, maybe it got blurred in with a Cockney accent. Seems that people are returning to Cockney a little bit. Russell Brand's got a Cockney accent, for instance, those from Essex, just outside London. Anyhow, I digress. So they say that RP emerged as late as the 1920s, when BBC was launched in 1922. All its announcers spoke this way, known as a BBC accent. It was much more distinctly upper class in the old days. More pucker, you might say. That's an RP word, as it is taken from Hindi to mean like just right. Previously, the upper class often spoke with regional accents, though some people say through the 18th century, as more people came to court, as in the King's Court, more of them picked up this accent. It became the way to speak at the top public schools at Oxford and Cambridge. People will even call it the Oxford accent sometimes. I suppose because the Oxford English Dictionary came out in the late 18th century. So what are some features of RP? Well, it definitely does not have a glottal stop. A glottal stop is when people would pronounce that phrase, glottal stop. Okay, skipping the letter T if it's in the middle of a word. The best example would be water bottle. I hope I'm not overemphasizing the T there, where with a glottal stop it would be water bottle. And people do this quite a lot. That's British English, particularly from the southern half of England, or even Americans often say 20 as opposed to 20. But in RP, people are thought to do the T's too hard, to pronounce them very distinctly, as though you're hammering the letter T. Let me see. Other things, there's only a vestigial letter R. Okay, it's almost like the dentist is saying, say R. Comes out like a long A. Even my name, George, perhaps it's more like a W. Unless, of course, the R is a word initial. I'm forcing myself to pronounce R with a distinct R at the beginning of it. We don't roll the R's normally. We definitely pronounce the TH, this and that. And we pronounce the TH properly, as I would see it, not vis and vat or fis and fat, which is more like Cockney. Let me see. Long vowels, not as long as they used to be. So RP's been rationalised over the past few decades. That people a generation or two older than me, and it's much more distinctive. It's strikingly upper class. It comes across as comical now. If you hear videos of the Queen speaking in the 1950s and other posh people speaking back then, and they've come much closer to normal. Accents have been rather homogenised. You listen to Prince William these days, and actually Kate Middleton has got more notably upper class features to her accent. Is that put on? Maybe subconsciously she felt a need to gain acceptance, or perhaps even consciously, and overdid it. Anyhow, the you and non-you words. One of the Mitford sisters came up with this list in the 1950s. You being upper class, non-you being not upper class. So the social marker ones like luncheon, bit old hat. I say it. I like to hang on to these words which are anachronistic as opposed to lunch. It's not a faux pas to say lunch. I'm saying sorry rather than pardon. If you didn't hear people are what. Notice the T I pronounced it what, not what. Trying to avoid directly alluding to the lavatory. And if you do call it that or loo or something like that, definitely not the T word, toilet. Make people wince. However, these rules are not as strict as they used to be. Saying pudding, definitely not saying sweet. Dessert is not you either, but it's not as terrible as sweet. Or afters is a working class word. Some people who speak RP then have adopted afters, I think, comically. I'm saying napkin, definitely not saying serviette. It was as though the middle class tried too hard to be sophisticated by adopting these French loanwords. I'm just bourgeois, but anyway, I speak RP. So people who speak this way, they're often thought of as conceited. In fairness, some of them really are stuck up, more so in the old days. People were said to have a plummy accent, sound like they have a plum in their mouth, maybe because a plum in itself was thought to be an expensive fruit. Some of the really old tags have gone, like beginning I say or by Jove. Those are decades out of date. I wouldn't disapprove of anyone saying these things, and it entertains me to use old-fashioned phraseology myself, greeting my chums with "How the devil are you?" Saying chap, bit old-fashioned. Chap-s, that's kind of affected. I've even heard mate-s, but mate is not a upper-class thing to say, but it's said sometimes. It's not distinctively you, can be non-you as well. Wireless for a radio, again, I haven't heard anyone say that for almost 20 years, and he was a real young fogey who was saying that. So that's a little bit about received pronunciation, which is also known by a number of different terms. And you might find it entertaining. I like to know about other people's patois, and that is part of my public information for this evening.